Madlab Performance presents The Lab Podcast. Here's your host and chief mad scientist, Dan Gilbert.
Hello and welcome everybody to The Lab. I'm here with our executive producer and fitness coach, Alec Bulat. Alec, how you doing today?
Good, solid so far. How you doing, Dan?
Oh, great as in every day. And once again, we're joined by Luke, Disco Biscuit, Hillman. Luke, how you doing, buddy?
Good.
Awesome. It's good to have you back.
It's fantastic to be here, Dan.
That I have no question of. And just real quick, ladies and gentlemen, this is also the Wolf Dog. No explanation once again. Today's podcast is brought to you by FNX Fitness. If you're looking for a supplement company that will help you rise up, look no further than FNX Fitness. With products ranging from recharge to help amp up your workout, restart for your AM protein blend, and rebalance for all your super green needs. Whether it be gaining muscle or just looking to live a healthier life, FNX will help you get there. For 15% off of all FNX products, this is really important, use code MADLAB, capital M, capital L, to make sure you put that in at checkout, and let's get you one step closer to your nutritional goals. Once again, that's pretty good, Alec.
Yeah, so the most impressive part of this entire situation, and I want the listeners to know this, is that you didn't laugh at all during this entire situation.
It's Luke as a Disco Biscuit that gets me.
Yeah, so I feel like I really, the minute you said it, I really want to know the background story of that nickname.
It was a nickname in middle school dance. So his 8th grade dance, they called him the Disco Biscuit for the way he twirled around the floor. And that may be real or not real. I'm not really sure at this point. And also, it's unimportant. So just the important part is that he is introduced as the Disco Biscuit.
Yeah, he is the Disco Biscuit.
And it took 3 or 4 takes for me to get that out.
Yeah, I was about to say that's something I feel like most people are just like,
they're not
aware of. Yeah. So Disco Biscuit, how you doing, bud? How you feeling? How's the staring at the couch going?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm just going to look right at the camera.
We got all sorts of cues. We got new equipment, and we got the YouTube thing going on, which is awesome. But it also takes a lot more work.
Yeah,
a lot of things we got to think about, like looking at cameras and controlling dogs.
Yeah, concentrating,
making sure Mike is appreciated, so that I actually watch the YouTube video and fully appreciate all the stuff that he's done. Yeah. Which you've done an amazing job, Michael.
Mike has an amazing job. I just want all the listeners to know that Mike is the all-star of this entire operation. So I might be the executive producer, but I am just one of. Honestly, Mike's really just doing anything. He's doing everything.
He really is. Yeah. Our Lord and Savior, we call him at times.
Yeah.
Disclaimer, the dog is not dead.
The dog is very much alive. Wait, Wolfie?
Wolfie's doing something. She's good. She's good.
Well, enough complimenting Mike here. Mike's a little overrated.
Yeah, what's the subject today?
Subject today, we're looking at fixing movement through exercise. Yep. Is that what we're looking at, guys? And so one of the things that I feel like a lot of people fail to look at is if they're doing a certain movement. Human beings are meant to do a lot of different movements. Unfortunately, in our current society, whether it be the way that we work, the way that we commute, the way that we sleep, or the way that we exercise, we tend to take certain movements and then do them constantly throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the months, throughout the years. And that can really cause some major imbalances in our bodies. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really want to get into today, for sure.
Yeah, man. So those repetitive motions, what do you think you see the most? What are the things that come at you right away? What?
I would say sitting's probably the biggest one, the one that we talk about all the time. I mean, sitting as we are, and then you have people driving, so maybe even with a little bit of a lean towards the center console, towards the radio, because a lot of people work that way. You end up with QL, glute med problems. Sitting, you get hip flexor issues. Mm-hmm. A lot of people that are anterior, so front of the body dominant, not posterior chain dominant enough, weak glutes, weak hamstrings, stuff like that.
For sure.
Weak abdominal muscles.
I mean, you were talking about this the other day. You were driving a whole bunch. What was it? Just Monday, and you were having some QL issues. Is that it?
I put in between my kids' camp and a bunch of other stuff and work. and then driving back to my house, we also like AC went out, so like that's the whole thing. I probably put in, I don't know, like 4 hours of driving, of commuting and just sitting, and then you saw how it showed up in my workout on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So yesterday.
Okay. Yeah, that was Tuesday. That
I was
about.
hurting. Well, I drove a bunch Monday,
Yeah.
and that set me up for yesterday.
For sure.
And I was much weaker on a lot of my lifts. I was in lots of pain. I had to have you guys to like help me through and like help stretch me and like do some manual therapy and stuff for me. It takes a toll on the body, and that was one day of driving. You put that into years and years and years and never doing anything to counterbalance. Then you start looking at not just some discomfort and then a little bit of limitation on your performance in the gym, but you look at those things and those things multiplied by like 20, 200, or whatever number that you want to add to it. We don't necessarily have to quantify this, gentleman, because Luke's and I ain't good at math. He's just a dancer, just the disco biscuit over there, just looking all excited. But then you start to look at some serious pain issues, right?
Yeah.
And then I think as well, you get a lot of your most common diagnoses come off of those things and no balance to them, right?
Yeah, so Luke, before I chime in anymore, I want to kind of hear your thoughts and ideas about this.
Just as the overall topic?
Yeah, man. So like, let's go about it this way, right? So if you were to say right now, what is something that you feel like you have done either recently or something that you do pretty consistently that leaves you in an imbalanced state, right? Similar to a Dan just driving around all day.
I gotta be honest with you. I'm pretty good these days.
But
Yeah.
not before.
Not
these days.
before.
Let's talk
but
about
I
what's
also-
happening with your. You had some serious back issues when
Yeah.
you first started working with us, right?
But I also didn't like work on a lot of those things. So I didn't work on glute activation.
But that's
I
what I'm
didn't-
saying, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
like
yeah.
now you do,
Yeah. So now I'm fine.
for sure.
But back however many years ago it was, didn't do really any lower body work at all. Didn't really think it was important because I looked at it more from an aesthetic standpoint than a functional standpoint.
Big chest and arms guy.
Yeah.
Chest and arms
So I
guy.
didn't really care too much for it until
Get those belted seated rows in.
I couldn't move as well, and then obviously it's a wake up call, and then I just started really doing a lot of different things like exercises people said were bad for your back, like deadlifts and stuff like that, are exercises that actually have helped me improve it tremendously.
Yeah, man.
So,
Well, I think a lot of you. So Luke had a pretty bad or a pretty painful and debilitating back issue when he came to us, and weren't you told not to deadlift anymore? Like,
I just
straight
was
up.
to not do anything not to play basketball. And,
Oh, nice.
yeah, all
Okay.
that kind of stuff.
So not even play sports.
No,
And how old were you when you were told this?
22-ish.
All right, so life is over pretty
Yeah,
much at 22.
yeah.
That makes sense. You're
Yeah.
super old when you're 22.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Just out of high school, man.
22?
It's really downhill from there.
right. But again, like it's probably a lot of sitting and then a lot of the same movement as sports, same movement in the gym all the time. And then you start to get back pain. So then some of the exercises that are really important to the posterior chain, like deadlifting, for example, go out the window because they cause back pain because you're not in a good position. And then also you have some imbalances that are pretty bad. Luke, I know for a fact, you had some wild hamstring flexibility, right?
Yeah. Or lack thereof.
I was about to say wildly low.
And so we would do like for our listeners, we'll do like a hamstring test, so just like a leg lift test. Ideally passing would be your leg goes, one leg is straight. So let's say I'm just going to lift my right leg. My left leg is straight out in front of me, and my knees being pressed into the ground because I want everything straight, toes not moving or anything. Right leg goes up. I try to keep it as straight as possible. If it starts to bend, then I take it from where it started to bend. So ideally we get to like perpendicular to the floor, if you guys can imagine that, almost like your legs are in an L. Not everybody's a little bit anatomically different, but you want pretty close to that.
Yeah.
Luke's one leg went like,
Both
I would say a foot above the other. He had both legs. So if you did either leg, it was this. Yeah.
So he was literally only able to get a foot off of the ground
Pretty much.
without his hamstrings.
That might be a little bit exaggeration. Yeah,
That
without
might be
him
a
starting
little
to
bit
bend.
exaggeration.
Yeah, it was bad.
But it
though.
was bad.
Yeah.
It was that bad.
I showed him a pigeon stretch too because he had femur rotation issues.
This is the one that was really bad.
Yeah, and so I showed him a pigeon stretch. I'm pretty sure it was off of a box too. It wasn't even on the ground. And that he just looked at me and was like, "That's not possible." He's like, "There's no way, Dan." And I was like, "Oh well, that's a problem."
That stretch, and let's go ahead and say this again. So you were 22 at the time when this was the case?
Yeah, around then, 22 to 23, something like that.
What were you doing that was causing this type of like?
Yeah, but
it's just like it wasn't like anything crazy. It was just like I was always active. So lifting, playing a ton of basketball.
But it's not enough, right?
Yeah.
So that's the point. Like people get in this pain, or they'll like start to get arthritis, and they'll think that it's just like a downhill thing. But if they never address why they're having the inflammation somewhere, because probably there's some asymmetry, so difference from side to side, difference from front to back, or a lack of mobility or stability in a certain joint, then if they never address those things, then they're going to constantly have pain, and then the more they move, the worse pain they're going to get in. So then because of that, they're going to start to, obviously it seems like common sense, move less.
That's the thing. Everything,
and then things are going to get worse.
Well, nobody wants to
treating
move
the local pain areas, not making you move better.
Right. So he had pain in his back.
So it's just like Advil, ice, whatever. And even then, ice was terrible.
Yeah.
Because they just locked it up.
Well, so we could go into ice for a while, right? Like, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of specialists who are just like, ice is taking away one of the most important parts of recovery.
I really don't like ice.
I don't like a lot of people don't realize this, and I actually had a conversation with a friend about this recently, right? Is icing, while important in some occasions for like acute injuries, is way overused. Like a lot of people overuse ice, especially, no offense to you guys, I don't want to target a group, but you Wim Hof enthusiasts out there are really big on your ice. But what ice is doing is it's taking away one of the principal portions of recovery, which is in fact that inflammation, right? Like when you're taking away your body's ability to inflame and start to incorporate that recovery process, that's just kind of delaying the entire situation. So I know that was a little bit of a segue, and I apologize for that. But
one of the important things about healing is like moving blood and fluid into an area, right?
Exactly.
And then also immobilizing something. And like swelling takes care of a lot of those things. There are times when I do agree, like swelling is an exception and not good. And really good medical practitioners will recognize that. And then it was tough to say.
I'm like, Dan, stick with me. Stick with me.
Medical practitioners, really good ones, will recognize that, and then they'll know when to do it or when not to. But a lot of times, I agree with you. I think the inflammation is important. And then on the flip side, just because somebody's in pain doesn't mean that, like, sometimes ice can be a huge detriment. So if it's muscular pain and the muscle is really tight, what happens when you put ice on something? Right? You're just going to tighten it? Yeah, you're going to lock it up even worse. I actually had a huge shoulder issue that was caused by that because I lifted like an idiot and I just didn't know how to manage my volume. I also didn't know anything about balance between like horizontal pushing versus horizontal pulling, and vertical pushing and vertical pulling. So I didn't know any of those concepts. Yeah. I just lifted and just worked as hard as possible and did it as many times as I could. And then I screwed up my neck and my shoulder. Yeah, iced it, and then I couldn't even drive.
Yeah. So it's like people don't realize pain is an important receptor. Like that is an important bodily function. And if you're just trying to like essentially just mitigate that and get rid of it, right? Like you're not addressing the actual core issue itself, right? You're just temporarily changing that.
Right.
Pain is an important receptor, and it's telling you something about something that's going on, which is kind of what we're talking about, right? Is like at the end of the day, the thing that was going to help Luke the most going forward was movement, right?
Right. Because
go ahead. No, please take it away.
So I would say with Luke's, like we just talked about his hamstring mobility. We talked about his ability to rotate his femur, right, in socket. So hip mobility is what we're basically talking about. And we've gone over that before, talking about like which joints should be mobile, which joints should be stable. And if there's an issue with a certain joint or area, then you look at the corresponding joints and like, all right, if the lower back is supposed to be stable and you have pain in your lower back, then you start looking at the hips. Are the hips mobile? If they're not, then the lower back's going to become more mobile and cause a problem. And then if you do some lifts like deadlifting without fixing it, then yes, it will hurt it. But you should fix the hip mobility so that you can deadlift again. You should fix the hip mobility so you can play basketball again.
You just do like a regress hinge though. So like, I mean, even then like...
bridging or something.
Yeah. I mean, even then like what really helped me achieve that mobility was working on strength in those areas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Through proper movement patterns.
Do you remember, because And
now I'm in like my knees feel great, my back feels great, my shoulders are great.
I mean, you can deadlift a good amount of weight now. I mean, it's still not as strong as me for sure, but you know, it's getting there.
Who could be though, right? Who could be?
I'm just kidding. But do you remember the things? Because I know what I would do, and I remember what I told you to do. But at the time that you started work with me, I mean, you were like working in the wild west of fitness. So there was a lot going on. So do you remember some of the things that you did, like to improve that, like that hip mobility and some of the issues you have, some of the lifts that you went through that helped you out?
So what I did is I was really dedicated on rolling out early.
So manual therapy,
rolling out all the hip flexor complex, lacrosse ball, a ton of my glute med.
Yeah.
Because a lot of my QL was from the glute med issue.
Yep.
And then just did really regress leg work. So like I would literally do like a pause goblet squat light, just to start getting like some glute activation.
Yeah.
From there, like, you know, doing RDLs. And then going from RDL, then going into a deadlift. So like just being slow and methodical with my regressions and progressions.
RDL single leg?
No, actually just bilateral.
Bilateral, just light bilateral?
Because think about it, I had no glute activation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that in itself started helping me, just doing that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, with a lot of the manual therapy stuff. I did some static stuff. I can see like active. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like a lot of like, you know, like couch stretch was one of them that I did.
That'd be a great
that
one.
I did like frequently. Once like the manual therapy actually helped me be able to pigeon stretch. So then I started doing that actually. And then just that kind of stuff. But I was constantly rolling.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't have to do that now, but just for where I was then, that kind of helped me get to here.
The gluteus medius is what he's referring to. It's on the side of your hip. So it's your biggest lower body stabilizer. The QL he's referring to is in your lower back. It's called your quadratus lumborum.
And I would do it between sets.
Yeah.
Like that's another thing I feel like is like, it's like idea that between your set you can roll out. Yeah. It's like even when I tell clients that, they're like, "Oh, I can." I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, it is something you don't think of because people program a certain way. They feel like they have to do an exercise all the time. But sometimes you can do like a movement correction, or some kind of manual therapy at the end of a certain set, or right after an exercise, or in between two exercises. And I think that's great, especially with people that have issues. Yeah. So there's ways to fit it in. Like you don't have to get your workout in and then do like a whole manual therapy and stretching session that night. You know, and be like, all right, well, I got to work out for an hour, but now I got to go home and stretch for an hour. Like, a lot of it you can kind of meld into one depending on what your issues are.
That's the thing. It was discipline to constantly do that every single day.
Yeah.
It's way easier for people to just, you know, like sit on their phone and do nothing during that time, right?
Yeah. So, but I mean, like, I really wanted to get better. Remember the hell that was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for you not to have to play basketball.
Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah.
But like, and then just each day, it's kind of like.
And you were losing 1-on-1 to Hendy all the time. That was very frustrating to you, I'm sure. Also,
Hendy from the previous podcast fame is the guy who moved our furniture for us, by the way.
We don't even need to bring up Hendy because Hendy's the most famous person that's ever touched this podcast.
That's true. Yeah.
Millions and millions of people know him from beating Luke 1-on-1 all the time.
Yeah.
So,
I would imagine
that's his biggest claim to fame. And also the way that he makes fun of Luke. He made a whole comedy series on it, I believe.
We'll have to wrap back into that at some point.
Sounds like
I would like to hear that.
Plot in the Inception movie. Had to do with a lot of the dream stuff.
So just separate realities.
Yes.
So
could be.
Just kind of keep on track really quickly, guys. If you had somebody right now who came to you, right, and I'm gonna keep this really general because obviously a lot of people won't understand exactly what's going on, right? But if somebody came to you and they're just like, man, my lower back is feeling really stiff, what would be the first things that you would do to get a general understanding of how to help them going forward?
I would probably take a look. I would probably take a look at the way, like this is a very simple movement. So I would probably take a look at a squat. So just how they squat, and depending on where they are, I might just have them squat down on something because I might just be. I mean, they could be really, really deconditioned, and I might worry that they're just gonna fall over doing it or whatever. But I'd probably take a look at that. Anytime there's strain on the lower back, I want to see full hip mobility. So I want to take a look at hip flexor complex. I want to take a look at hamstrings, and then I want to take a look at the the muscles that externally rotate the femur and internally rotate the femur.
Okay.
And what I'm really looking for is differences from side to side.
Yeah.
And then like a general problem, maybe being able to use the glutes and hamstrings, being able to use the posterior chain instead of being so tight in the hip flexor complex that it's causing a problem and maybe causing a tilt to their pelvis as well.
Absolutely, man. So let's go a little bit even further this, and maybe Luke, I'll turn it to you this time, man, right? So, okay, so you have person A, right? They come in and they're just like, damn, my lower back is feeling tight. You check them out and you notice that they're having a hard time with, let's just go ahead and just say like external rotation, right? On their right side, right? What would be some of the first things that you would do?
So they're like,
yeah, so if they're sitting like this, and yeah, exactly.
I can't even get my leg up here.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that's probably why you're in pain.
They're trying to pull it up, and they're just not even able to get into that position, right? They can't even do it. What would be like
Other sides like
2-3 things that you would do with them like right
Manual therapy.
Okay.
I would just have them roll out their glute med first.
Yeah, a lot of
And
lacrosse ball on the glute med, either against the wall or on the floor. Definitely, like if the pigeon stretch was too much, then I would just I'd have them sit and then like just working to like leaning into.
To that point, I was going to say
rotation.
like there were like a kind of like a elementary version of the pigeon stretches with the incline bench and like putting it down.
Yeah, you can even make it easier.
Yeah. So I can do that with. I actually
if I'm working with them, I might do like the favorite test is with them laying down.
So I think that's important actually. Go ahead and explain for the listeners like what was the favorite test.
The favorite test is I'm lying on my back. One leg is straight, the other leg is I'm going to put my ankle above my knee, and then I want to see how far the knee that's bent is off of the floor or the table or wherever I'm doing it. And then I'm really looking for a difference from side to side, but I'm also looking for I like to do like a fist, right? Does my fist fit underneath? Is there a huge gap? If there's a huge gap, I'm worried, even if it's on both sides. If there's a big difference from side to side, then I'm equally as worried, maybe even more so, right? Because we're looking at those differences. So I would say that. And then besides the hip mobility, I would also look directly at stabilizing lower back. So I would look at core strength, right?
Okay.
Are they able to do anti-extension? So anti-extension, like if your back's extended, it's like when it's arched, right? So is your core able to stop that from happening? So like, can somebody do like a simple plank without feeling their back? Look at just some general bracing concepts as a person be able to activate their core that way.
Okay.
So like those kind of things, because if they can't in some simple, with some simple ideas like a plank, then they're definitely not going to be able to in more complex things like a deadlift or like picking something off the floor or something like that.
Yeah, of course.
If that makes sense.
If you can't stabilize with something like the plank, like how are they expected to carry load in that fashion?
Right,
Like,
or do something more dynamic even.
Exactly.
Even just pick up a pen, really.
Yeah. No, I mean, and like you could have every single like, angle and like specific like point positioned out well, but if they don't have like the actual strength and capacity to be able to take that load going forward, like it's just not going to happen. So,
before you get into something else, did they give you a diagnosis for your back?
No, because I didn't.
All right, so this is a frustrating thing to me as well, because I think there's some common diagnosis that come around, and because the way that we look at health a lot of times is very symptomatic and it's very localized. So some people, and also imaging is great. So I love that we can take X-rays and then we can do MRIs and like find some really wild things from those things. But I think that we need to get better as a whole as looking at those and then taking the right information from them. And I see people, if you look at if I said I had back pain right now, and I was like, and I just faked my back pain, right? Somebody could look at my spine and be like, oh, your discs are degenerating, right? Because everybody's discs degenerate over time. Same way with like labrum stuff, like labrum in the shoulder, labrum in the hip. If I said, oh, my hip is catching, somebody could be like, oh, well, it looks like you got some tears in your labrum. Of course I do, but is that even happening, especially if I'm faking it, obviously? So there's some things that are going to be there no matter what, and you can't just take that and go, oh, well, we don't know what else it could be.
And that happens at a young age, too.
All the time. So if somebody's discs are degenerating, that means that it's only going to get worse over time, pretty much.
That's what I was going to say. Like, you look at, like, the average lifespan is, like, 73 years old? Not like what it is now.
I think it's increased a little bit now, but, like,
mine's decreased a little bit over time.
So that's just you.
Yeah. So I think mine's at, like,
mine's
48.
Increased.
So I've only got a little bit more time here.
But like what you're saying, like when you're saying somebody who, like, say is a teenager, let's just say like 18 years old, which we've heard stuff like this before, where they have degenerative disc.
Yeah.
It's like, so by the time, I'm not even going to go all the way to 70, so by the time they're 40, they're not going to have like a spine. Is basically what you're, it just is all just degenerates.
It's gone.
Yeah, like that's kind of like
Dust.
what you're you're kind of saying.
And that's a frustrating thing for me, because then again you were like, all right, well, we couldn't immediately find the reason this is happening, so we should just tell them to stop certain movements that are good for the human body, but that will hurt them right now.
Yeah.
So we'll tell them they can just never do those again. And this is this is kind of at the worst level, but it happens.
Yeah.
It's very common.
Yeah,
I mean, we've already seen clients that have had this told to them, right?
Yeah.
Right. So this is not like a far off thing that we're talking about. Don't do these movements. Don't run anymore. Don't play basketball anymore. Don't deadlift anymore. No more squatting or whatever it is. Right. Apply ice when it hurts. Here's some pills. Take these, or just take Advil. Maybe we get like really wild and start to put a shot in the back. Let's get a corticosteroid in there.
Well, and that's the biggest thing. Is like people just don't know. Like,
right,
how
it's
to
not
fix
their
these
fault.
things. So
Yeah.
like it's like, to be honest with you, the only reason I think that like I was like did not give in is just my personality. Like I'm just saying,
We
like,
can
I
get into
got lucky.
that.
I got lucky. Like I'm just stubborn. Like I'm not gonna do it. Like to me, it didn't make sense at that young age. Like I couldn't do this for the rest of my
You don't
life.
do betas.
And then and then
Luke
and
doesn't
then
play beta games.
Naturally,
No fine arts.
then naturally, then when we started doing stuff.
Naturally stubborn. Could have saved
But-
you there though.
So the point I'm trying to make here
I'm sorry.
is
I'm
that
sorry.
I got lucky because of that, and not everyone is probably built that way.
True. I mean,
So
and they're also told not to do
And
that,
that's
right?
what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
like it literally was just that I'm super stubborn, and then also happened to go through a lot of that stuff with you when we first met years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wasn't so lucky on a couple of different fronts. Like,
Yeah.
I had the thing with my shoulder, which I won't fully go into, but that wasn't fixed by anybody. And then also at a doctor's office, they put a corticosteroid in my shoulder, and then they put it in the bone. And then I passed out and I fell off the doctor's table, and I got the worst. I've had a lot of concussions, if anybody can't tell by the way I talk to you probably. But I fell off the doctor's table, and of all concussions that I've had, that was the worst one I ever had.
Yeah.
I probably should have sued that place, but I'm not really built like that either. But all of that, like none of that helped. None of it fixed the shoulder at all. And then I had to go through all of that, and there was like so much money involved and all sorts of things that could have easily been avoided if it was just been treated in a smarter way.
Yeah. So to kind of keep this in line with what we're really trying to go forward with, though, right?
You're saying we're getting off topic?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Believe it or not.
And yeah, I was about to say it's possible for you
That's
guys.
why Alec exists.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I have the role that I do. Staring at you, camera. So point being though is that okay, so you guys have been able to get past those, right? And I think that's the important and crucial element to take away from this is you guys have gone through these issues with your back, you've gone through your shoulder injuries. I know you've gone through multiple different injuries.
And a lot of our clients have too.
And a lot of our clients have too. But at the end of the day, the stuff that really helped you out going forward was not just manual therapy, but also movement, right?
Right.
So I want to take another one just to like really.
Can we talk about
But
you're talking about an injury?
strengthening movement. I wouldn't say.
Are you going to go through a
movement
common
itself.
diagnosis?
No, I wasn't gonna. Hold on, you guys didn't even know what I was gonna.
We get
go into.
excited.
Yeah, I know. I can tell. You like Luke is here getting like a little bit slightly offended, and then like you're just getting like a puppy dog excited, and so I'm just like the energy from it.
Look
was
at our
like,
different
yeah.
our seating positions.
Yeah, exactly.
Luke even has a desk just so he can put his feet up. I'm sitting way forward. Wolf Dog's passed out.
No. So let's. I'll give you guys a chance. Go ahead.
Right.
Let's talk about it a little bit.
Let's talk
about it a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about like so obviously your diagnoses were, I don't want to say false necessarily because I wasn't sure what they said in the beginning, but at the end of the day you guys were able to overcome them and are doing motions that they told you that you would never do because, and Luke, you said this really well, you strengthened up the movements, right? So you made yourself bulletproof through strengthening your body's ability to withstand these types of, quote unquote injuries or things that could never, ever happen to anybody or you wouldn't be able to come back from, right?
Right.
So let's go through some. Like what were the things? What'd you do? Tell me.
Well, first of all, I'm gonna go through an example of like how some of this stuff happened, and then yes,
Okay.
for sure. So Luke can deadlift now. Like I said, like a really good amount of weight, and he also plays. You play basketball regularly all the time. I was sold out because of one of my ACL injuries. My first one, I would never play contact sports again, and then I went on to play rugby, and I still do jiu-jitsu and fight, and I played basketball with them.
We're rolling tomorrow, by the way.
Yeah, we're rolling
Yes,
tomorrow for sure. We got to figure out a time on that. So there's ways to come back from. We had a client that was told that she would never run again, or shouldn't run anymore because she had really bad plantar fasciitis, and that obviously wasn't true because she can run again. As well, she might not be the biggest fan of running, but she is running again, and I feel like does a really good job. She does an amazing job in the gym. We've had people with knee pain, just so simple. They were told arthritis in the knee, which ended up being patellar-femoral, which means so
PTS,
runner's
just
knee.
PTS.
Yeah, they'll call it runner's knee. They'll say you have arthritis in your knee. Those are at the basic levels. If somebody's a little more advanced, they'll say it's patellar-femoral, which means that your femur, so your thigh bone, does not line up with your patella, so your kneecap.
Yeah.
But then you should just get the kneecap to line back up with the femur, which really is not rocket science at all. And then when that happens, believe it or not, the knee pain goes away.
I was about to say, Mike and I were literally just talking about this as we were sitting outside. I was like going through the NASM corrective book, and I was just kind of checking stuff out, and I was telling him about like just basic understanding of like Q angles and stuff like that, and just like patellofemoral syndrome, right? And a lot of people, and Mike was actually saying that like you'll see people going to the office and they'll just be like, oh, you need a knee replacement. When in reality, these people are literally just like, they're too tight through their IT band and that patella is just being pulled laterally, right?
Right.
So they're in pain.
Or vastus lateralis,
or
medialis is shot, or whatever.
Whatever you want to say, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, that pain and those kind of pains, in my opinion, those are things that are like, that's like a simple shift, right?
Right. And a lot of times, just because this is something that I could rant about, because I have a lot of people that come to us for knee pain, right? Probably 80 or 90% of knee pain usually is just how the kneecap is placed, and then vastus lateralis is an outside quad, vastus medialis is your inside quad, vastus medialis is usually not working that well, vastus lateralis is usually doing too much, kneecap shifts laterally, and then you're doing the same motion over and over, whether it be biking or running. Sometimes it hurts on stairs or going up or down. I'm just loading that knee, and then sometimes ankle mobility plays into it as well. All we have to do is fix some of those things with some basic concepts like rolling out, some basic stretching of the quad.
To the rolling out thing, that kind of what I did want to say is consistently rolling out helps, but there is like chronic rolling out.
Yeah.
No, and I'm being dead serious.
I know, but I just think of
a certain person. I know exactly where your mind went. Yeah. But which you actually at that point are doing more harm than good. And then also too, one thing you are doing is it is a way just to address the symptom.
Right.
So if you're not working on movement patterns and stuff, that alone won't help. Yeah. For longevity. It just won't.
Relax certain muscles, but then also you need to fix the patterns and strengthen yourself through patterns. This is why strength is so important. And sometimes strength takes care of almost all of certain problems, right? And you'd be very surprised.
Problems.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Yeah.
It can hide certain problems.
So you do want to kind of fix whatever. Yeah. But again, like the strength is such an important, such underrated aspect of managing pain. It's wild to me. I think that a lot of regular pain that you think of can be fixed by strengthening the right things, right? Some patellofemoral, right? If somebody's really properly strong through the glute and their hamstring, they probably don't have an issue with that, right? And there's exceptions for sure.
We can't obviously just say blanket statements, right? Like you're not gonna hurt if you do X, Y, and Z.
There's no blanket statements with the human body.
No,
just because everybody, and that's why I love this field, right? Because everybody's body is so different, so it's constant problem solving all the time. People have different anatomies. People have different histories, lifestyles, genetics, like just all sorts of things go on. And then also research changes all the time and gets progressed ideally.
Yeah, I mean, in our field, let's be honest. In our field,
it does.
Progresses pretty consistently, right?
And I do think our field is getting much better.
Yeah.
Despite what people say about like, you have your Instagram influencers and all that sort of stuff, but I do know I would say for a fact that when I first started doing this, our industry wasn't even close to where it is now. So
Oh,
that was only like 12 years ago, and things are, I think, dramatically different.
Only 12 years ago?
Yeah, I think. I'll see. We're not scoring himself
And
any
you're making
points
fun
there.
of me over here. I mean,
Yeah.
you pulled out the age joke.
I
That's
know.
all
I'm
good.
gonna have to leave Luke alone for a little bit.
I was
you know?
gonna say, didn't expect that from me, did you, bud?
No,
yeah.
I didn't.
But I mean, no, I think it's one of those things where, like, and no offense to you people who have been in the medical community for a very long time, but the people that are our age, right? The new wave of professionals are starting to understand, and they're researching different things, and they're taking time to understand the human body in a different way than was previously prescribed and previously researched and previously taught, right? And I know you guys, I'm not even going to get you started on this, so let's stick to just me saying it, is schools will, hold on, will, at least they used to, teach a very certain way. And those things have changed pretty extensively over time, and just as you said, just in the 12 years,
way to go, though.
they still have a long way to go. But we'll pin that and save that for later. So, Luke, I'm gonna turn it back to you for a second, right? Because I feel like we've been kind of keeping you from like really going where you want to go with this. So, besides, you don't think so?
No. Well, go ahead. Just
Well, you want to say,
Luke always goes where he wants to go at the end
I
of
was
the
about to
day.
say, no, I feel like,
place
at
is
least
home.
personally, I felt like I was cutting you from having your really like long discussion on like what really took you from feeling good consistently through your back to playing basketball and all that stuff. Because we talked about his, for the most part, like his shoulder, knees, stuff like that, but we didn't really go too much into it. But we didn't really go in depth about your
It's
back.
not really a flashy story. It's just honestly
Not flashy.
Yeah,
Well, I mean that's not bad.
I mean, honestly, it's just like I said before, it's consistency.
Okay.
So that's the big thing. So like the consistency with working on your movement patterns. I mean, even to this day, in my weekly programming, I have movement patterns I do every week.
Yeah.
From a single leg work. I mean, if anything, I will do single leg work over bilateral work. But that's just me. Like if I had to choose, I would do a single leg hinge or a single leg squat movement over a bilateral squat or hinge movement.
But why? Why?
Because it's just a lot more functional.
Okay.
And so, I mean, and that's, I think...
But most of the human movement is unilateral.
Yeah.
I think is what he's trying to say. And then
Yeah.
also, one of your biggest goals is basketball, correct?
Yeah.
And be able to perform on the court.
Well, and just be able to move
So
well.
you can continue talking as much trash as you talk.
But yeah, it's just about moving well, and I think that's another thing too. Is of course like you want to grow muscle. Like everyone kind of wants the aesthetic look, but then also too, it's I think that kind of gets lost with building up, almost just from a muscular standpoint, but not really looking at building up certain movement patterns. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Do you agree with that? Or?
I would completely
Yeah.
agree with that.
So- That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and then another thing too is like a big thing too with these movement patterns is range of motion. So I mean, the two things you lose as you get older is power and range of motion, and so that's why I believe you got to constantly train those.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? So and it makes a difference. Like to me now, like I said, like
Yeah.
I feel, knock on wood, bulletproof.
But yeah, I would say like that's a really good point, because I don't even really think about my own training all the time.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm doing a million other things. But I mean I love my own training. I dedicate myself to it for sure. But then I think because we're so consistent in managing problems that we've had in the past, and like managing problems that crop up, it's easier to see it coming, right? For example, like when I drove so much, I took a while yesterday and was like probably too long of a time, like, and I took some time out of my lift and was like, hey, I need help with these issues because I can already tell it's a problem.
Yeah.
Right? And I was saying that from the beginning, but I didn't just try to live through it and then never address it and then go again. But I would have done that before. You know, I would have done that in my 20s. I'm 39 now, and I feel way less pain than I did when I was 22.
Yeah,
for sure.
The key is, in my opinion, is you got to look at everything on the lifetime scale, not on like the 1 year scale, the 2 year scale.
I don't like it.
So
I
like,
look only this far ahead of me, Luke.
So like I think, and then to your point, like some of the big like the names that I think in fitness that are kind of coming up a little bit right now, the good ones, longevity is something to constantly talk about. And it's keeping your body
Quality of life.
Yeah, your quality of life throughout, literally, throughout your life. So, but that has been I think more of a focus now, I would say, in the industry.
Do you guys
really
know who Dr. Andre Espino is? Guy who started functional range conditioning.
I do not.
Nah? Oh, you guys should check him out. FRC stuff is great, but Dr. Andre
I know
Espino
FRC, but I didn't know what the name is.
So he likes to be called Dre, apparently, which I think is one of the funniest things in the world. He likes to be called Dr. Dre. So let's just leave that out for everybody. But
I just have people call me Dog. Snoop. Dog.
That was a bad joke.
That was can we cut that? Edit that out? No,
Jesus.
okay.
I'm only here for one or two people to get anything.
I didn't realize Mike was making the jokes here.
Mike. That was a tribute to Mike Hamilton.
But God, but his idea and the reason he even started with FRC right from the start was like he wanted to promote joint health and longevity, right? Was like that was like his main thing. He's a jiu-jitsu guy, right? And a lot of the people who are FRC instructors are also jiu-jitsu people because in jiu-jitsu, as you know, right, you have to be able to move in a lot of funky ways. And that takes range of motion capacity, right? And so FRC, the understanding behind it, right, is training furthered capacity through range of motion, right? So you're constantly pushing your limits of range of motion, right? So you take external rotation, right? So you're in a 90-90 position, right? So essentially for everybody who doesn't know what that exactly is, it's exactly what it sounds, right? Your hips are 90 degrees, and you're training a hip external rotation, and you're trying to continuously progress that like you would a bench press, right? You're going like 5 pounds heavier every week for your bench. You're going 5 degrees further in your external rotation from a 90-90 position, right? That's that type of training that is lost upon a lot of people, right? They don't understand the importance of that type of, and they don't say mobility training. They don't use mobility. It's like, the range of motion and the capacity to be able to be in positions. That's important.
And I think that it gets lost because people don't understand why range of motion is important other than its face value, right? People like range of motion, I can do more crazy stuff.
You just got to change the pump, man. You're just chasing the pump.
That's right. I can do more crazy stuff, and then, maybe I'll save myself from some pain in the future, right? However, range of motion is extremely important in power and strength because once you reach the end of your range of motion, that's when you're the weakest and the least powerful. So the more range of motion you have, the longer you're going to be stronger through a certain movement.
For sure.
And that becomes really important in any athletic endeavor, pretty much. Certainly jiu-jitsu. And it also is important, and even just if you just care about your strength gains and lifting. Like
I'll take myself as an example for a second. Like I was an Olympic lifter for a bit, right? Range of motion is huge in Olympic lifting. If you're not
that sport for sure.
If you're not able to get underneath a snatch in a certain position, you won't be able to snatch as much, right? Like if you can't get onto the bottom of a squat further and further, right? And you've seen some of the people on the Olympics, like the Olympics are going on right now. For all you guys who are watching those weightlifters, you're seeing those people, those squats, their ass is almost touching the grass, right? Literally at the very bottom. They have worked that type of range of motion consistently for a very long time. That's stuff that they practice, right? People think they're just born with it. That's not the case. They train it. And so being able to hit those type of positions is the difference between a 275-pound snatch all the way to a 365-pound snatch. Because if you can't catch at the bottom of that snatch, you're not going to be able to do it. And I don't care how powerful you are, I don't care how strong you are, you just can't do it, right?
Yeah, I do think to that too. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier, where it's like a lot of things in fitness, at least general pop, is looked at just about muscle growth.
Yeah.
Am I right? So like when I say like for instance, like like these exercises and stuff, to say you just take like a RFE. Have you ever seen someone in a gym? Typically, I would say 90% of people who do or Bulgarian split squat, whatever you want to call it. How low do they go?
We only need to go a couple inches here.
Yeah, it's like, and it's
just
like,
so that they're like, I feel a little bit, so that's all I need to do.
Because you can't grow muscle or anything. That's like the biggest thing with, it's like, well, if you actually use the entire muscle, it'll probably grow.
Yeah, because you're using the entire muscle, and then you're growing all the muscle fibers. Yeah, for sure.
So, but I think that is what kind of ruins some of these things, is that it's just, and that's
a really good point.
That's where Instagram plays in, because everyone just sees these people like with their shirt off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you spot me on bench?
Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, I chased a pump. And
Are you
it's
cold?
Just like, yeah.
That's just, you're just shivering.
And it's not enough talk about movement. And like honestly, you train your movement really well. I mean, look at like even the strongmen. Like I want to act like they are really good with their movements.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? So I mean, it's not like they're just like like I don't know what you want to call it, like snowmen just waddling around.
So that's an interesting pick. I was thinking more like boulders, like the things.
But you know what I mean? Though? Like they're actually very athletic, and so because they train range of motion.
Yeah, a bunch of Olafs is walking around singing.
Snowman was an interesting choice on that, but I understand what you're saying.
Round, rotund. I mean, when you see like Frosty the Snowman, he's like waddling around.
Once again, you're not wrong. I didn't
scrapes his ass.
I didn't think of that right.
Against the ground as he walks, so who knows?
Like Wolfie.
Just like Wolfie.
Okay.
She did that to your carpet earlier, by the way. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, okay. So returning back really quickly. Let's try and keep this as on pace as possible. I know you got something to say.
I do.
Give me a second.
I think it goes into what you're about to say. So why don't you say it?
Is it though?
I don't know. You go.
Okay. So what I was gonna say is because we do have to factor in the that we want this podcast to have like a certain level of time, right? So
3 hours.
3 hours maybe.
3 hours, yeah. So
we're in here for the long haul. Why do you think we drink this coffee?
Before we move on though, I know you're gonna hate this, but we talked a lot about the lower body. Yeah. One place I think we really should talk about is the shoulder.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't hate that.
I feel like that's a huge one we see.
Matter of fact, actually, I was going to move on to that.
Okay. That's what I was about to
say. Were we all on the same page and we just didn't know it?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Now I feel like I feel like I'm tight just talking about these issues. I'm like, my kneecap. So shoulder pain, super common.
That's a huge one.
Yes. Again, shoulder pain could be, what do we hear most? Like arthritis or bursitis?
Yeah.
Is what we get? Just some kind of...
I wouldn't even say bursitis.
People just say rotator cuff a lot.
That's literally...
Oh, it's your rotator cuff.
Yeah, it's your rotator cuff.
What is the rotator cuff? You have 4 of them, and then you have other muscles besides the rotator cuff muscles that are responsible for rotation of the humerus.
They're like, it's a complex joint. You're like, okay, sweet. Like,
yeah, but you're not giving us a complex answer.
Yeah.
You know?
It's just like,
and then God knows, I mean, you have so many muscles that attach to the scapula as well. So
like, I don't need a Google search explanation.
Right.
All right.
Does a person have, if there's person's having shoulder pain, their glenohumeral joint, so their shoulder joint, does it have proper range of motion?
Yeah.
No, not on one side, but yes on the other. Well, then let's try to fix the range of motion on one side, right? Do they have stability through their shoulder blade? No. Well, let's get stability through their shoulder blade, right? It's pretty common sense at first, and we don't even address that, and that's like the most basic level of care to me. Instead of going, all right, well, let's put a needle in this person's shoulder, or you better ice and take Advil. If it doesn't get any better, we'll look at replacing the shoulder. Mm-hmm. What? Like that doesn't.
I mean, most of the time, and tell me if I'm wrong, but most of the time, I feel like, just in my experience, like if someone has shoulder pain, the actual delt muscles have nothing to do with it.
I'd be surprised if
frontal delt, medial delt, rear delt. It can, but typically, and that's a lot of the target.
Yeah.
I mean, a little cortisone shot in there, eat away your tendons.
Right.
Nice.
That's what happens.
Yeah. I'm like, I think more often than not, like obviously, right, a lot of people are going to end up being like, that typically like what they used to call like upper cross syndrome, right? So they're pretty tight through their pecs and they're probably, front delt and they're just kind of, got that hunch, right?
Most jobs are on the computer these
Exactly,
days.
yeah.
You're stuck in that position, that forward position.
Got your mouse hand.
Yeah. So they're already putting themselves in a pretty compromising position without even realizing it from repetitive non-motion, right? I want to say repetitive motion, but it's just a stance, right? And so you're 100% right. Is that it's like rarely, besides the fact that a lot of people could use to develop their rear delts a lot more, right? Like delts really aren't the issue, right? It's just that protracted motion that they're kind of just sitting there.
Yeah, they're just, I would say, symptom indicators.
Yeah. That's a good way to say it.
Then exactly, then that's what's really what's causing it.
Yeah, that would have caused Luke to get points on the board.
yes. If we were playing the game that we will one day play, is essentially, and we figured out it's around the horn, not part of the interruption.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, it's around the horn.
I also think that Dan should be docked 30 points for that joke. The Snoop Dogg joke.
I don't know why that has to come back.
No, but let's say we're cutting that, right? We're cutting that mic, right? Yeah.
But now we're cutting
he says sure.
all of this. All sorts of things are getting cut.
So,
I want to cut 40% of Luke's answers in speech. Every time from here on out. Not even this one.
But you're right, man. It's a lack of understanding more often than not, right? But also at the same time, it's just the fact that people just don't have an understanding of what the rotator cuff is. Matter of fact, I have a prime example of this. A gym that I used to work at, one of my coworkers came up to me and was just like, "Hey, I'm having pain through my shoulder. I think it's rotator cuff." And it was just like pointing around. And at the end of the day, it was like, okay, let's take a second. What does the rotator cuff mean to you, right? Like, what does that mean? They'll literally, like, they'll talk about it like it's just like, yeah, it's the ring around that, like, the rotator
It's
cuff.
the wheel that makes my shoulder go around.
And even I didn't fully understand what the rotator cuff was for like a long time. Like, and once again, rotator cuff, they use it like it's one word, right? It's a multitude of muscles,
Hip flexor.
right? Yeah,
It's the same
Yeah,
one.
hip flexor is
Exactly.
another one. By the way, you have like 27 muscles that flex your hip. You have a bunch of muscles that
my
flex your
hip flexor is
My
the
hip
issue.
flexor.
I'm just
What's
kinda,
the
it's
hip
just, you just
flexor?
kind of like,
We were talking about that old guy who comes into the gym and was just like, yeah, it's like, I had that one injury, right? Rotator cuff, hip flexor, or knee, right?
knee.
Those are like the
Very
three general ones. Yeah.
and they
Oh,
all
what
can
happened?
bench about 500 pounds too.
Yeah, the
They're
bar of
fine.
bending.
The bar's bent.
I knew the Barbarian Brothers.
Yeah.
So
That was a real conversation. I'm not kidding.
I'm about to say, we'll get into that later. I think it's important to address, like, okay, why are shoulders typically so rounded in that fashion? Why are people getting so much anterior pain through their shoulders? And so let's go ahead, Dan, take it away for a second. Why do you think that is?
Again, it's just the way that we introduced the episode before we got on to all sorts of different things. It's way to bring it back, Alec. It's the way that people are moving in everyday life or not moving in everyday life. So it's their positions, and it's their positions in volume or hours of the day, right? So my shoulder could hurt because I have an IT job and my right hand's on the mouse all the time. Arm is forward, arms moving forward all the time, protract, right? And then all of a sudden I have an imbalance in my shoulder. I start to get pain. It starts to get worse. I start to do things to like stop movement or whatever. I ice it. It starts to get even worse at some point.
Yeah.
And then extreme example, and really, it is fairly common. I have to get something fixed, whether I tear my rotator cuff doing something in everyday life that I used to be able to do. Like I throw a ball to my kid and I'm like, I tore my rotator cuff muscle, right? I think the most often torn is the supraspinatus, I believe. Don't quote me fully on that, but I'm pretty sure.
It's pretty common, though.
Yeah, but so like one of the muscles that hold my, that help rotate my humerus, and then also hold my shoulder into place. So one of those tears, maybe it's a labral tear, so like some of the cushioning or whatever. But that happens, or my shoulder has just deteriorated so much and gotten so impinged that they're like, let's not fix anything, let's just replace the joint.
Okay.
Right?
So really quickly for our listeners, because we are starting to get short on time, is what are like just some simple things right away that you guys can think of that are going to help if they have that consistent IT job, because a lot of people do nowadays. They're working from home, they're working on computers. What are they going to be able to do? Yeah.
I would tell, if this is my...
Train 5 times a week with Luke Hillman at a time that he has space for.
Yes.
Besides that, it would be literally, like if you work in an office or work from home, whatever you're doing with the computer, I would make it, and it's going to sound crazy, but have a band and they do face pulls 3 times a day.
That's not the worst thing.
Yeah.
Correctly.
I know it sounds like correctly, because I feel like, and that the minimal on top of actually exercise. That's just for the shoulder though. But like, like for instance, like when you're in that position.
Yeah, before they're even in. So you're saying like before you're in pain, before anything.
Yeah.
That would actually help a lot. That's not the worst thing.
Think of it as like a multivitamin.
Move more, exercise, have a lot of horizontal pulling.
Yeah.
Face pulls, again, are an excellent one, because if you're in a position, to Luke's point, so if I'm in a position where my upper arm, so my humerus, is close to my body, so adducted, and then also I'm turned in a little bit, so internally rotated, and then also my shoulders pulled forward, so protracted. If I do a movement that excellently rotates adducts, so pulls it away from the body, and then retracts it, then I'm balancing my mouse movement or my seated position out, right?
Yeah.
I'm now balancing my driving, or maybe the way that I sleep, because my shoulders pulled forward when I sleep or whatever. So same thing when you have somebody sitting a lot. Hip flexors are tight. Do something to stretch the hip flexors, maybe some manual therapy to them, and then do things to work the posterior chain. Maybe I'm an avid biker and I bike a ton. That's a lot of hip flexion. Let me get some glute bridging in there. Let me get some RDLs for my hamstrings. Maybe some actual like direct hamstring work, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right. So find out what it is that you do in volume and that could be causing a problem in your life, and then with your exercise and your movement, counterbalance that at the very least. Right. So that's a very minimum to keep your quality of life, I think, is what we're really trying to say here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
I'm trying to say is
sounds good.
love is blind.
What a way to close it. All right. Well, I think. Do you guys have any closing statements that you want to make before we start to wrap
I have a
up
bunch.
today?
We can talk about all sorts of things. Carpal tunnel is another one that drives me crazy. A lot of that comes from the show. We won't get into that.
No. Actually, let's take a little time. I want to hear about that because a lot of people nowadays, they're typing a lot, they're doing a lot of things, they experience what they consider carpal tunnel a lot. So let's go into that briefly, as briefly as you can.
All right. I mean, it can be a little bit complicated, but I was told I had carpal tunnel in my wrist before, and it was really just from lifting. I was also told one time I had tennis elbow, and the guy like literally asked me how many times that I played tennis, and I was like 0 times. I don't play tennis. I mean, I have before, but that's not where I got it from. Some of it is just like overuse of just a certain movement with weights. Sometimes grappling. A lot of grappling and gripping and stuff like that can cause some problems in the wrist and the forearm. If you have somebody getting carpal tunnel, it could just be, a lot of it is typing or mouse movement, but not necessarily coming from the wrist itself. It could be coming from the shoulder, and most of those things that I've seen and the ones that I've fixed have been coming from the shoulder. And just relaxing some of the muscles in the shoulder, stabilizing the scapula, again starting to retract, and stopping some of the nerves from being impinged in the shoulder.
Yeah.
Right. So there's some stuff. I mean, that starts to get a little more complicated than us talking about patellofemoral and some of the other stuff. But a lot of those are fixable, and I find it rare that it actually is like right at the site of the issue.
Okay.
So that one's another one that like drives me crazy on how many times that I've seen it diagnosed. People have told me that's what it was, and I was like, all right, well, let's see what we can do about it. And then us having fixed it. If it was actual carpal tunnel, then I can't fix that. It's beyond my scope, right? I can't go in the wrist and like do the surgery.
I would hope not.
So very few people have I seen that actually need that surgery.
Yeah.
So then I wonder how many people, if those people would have gotten it, how many people actually get the carpal tunnel surgery?
Yeah.
And then it's fixed for a little bit because maybe they stopped some of they fixed some of the nerve pathways a little bit for a short period of time, and then it starts happening again, and they need another surgery or something else happens, right? Like that's the kind of stuff that drives me crazy. So I feel like before you dig into somebody, or before like take power of your own health, right? Before that you start to get a surgery, whatever, figure out a way to get your movement addressed. Right? If your movement is good and you're still having a lot of pain, or something is like sticking or a joint's popping out, that is, you probably do need some kind of surgery or something else going on. But before that, take a look. Oh, do you have a huge asymmetry in one side from another side? Take a look at that. Is there a big difference between front of the body with the back of the body? Do you have a problem stabilizing a certain part that should be stable? Do you have a problem mobilizing a certain part that should be mobile? Fix those things first before you start going under a knife and have some major surgery.
For sure. Luke, do you have any follow-up comments?
Not really. Just quickly.
Yeah.
Same theme as last week's podcast. Take control of your health.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Don't be reactive. Be proactive.
Agreed.
Yes. And if you can't find a way to take control of your own health and you don't have access to the resources, or you know somebody that needs that help like that and they don't have access to resources, then please, Our Health Initiative, so ourhealthinc.org, and we can just reach out to us and we can figure out a way to help them for no money, whether it's you or somebody else that you know, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said today, guys. Seriously. Appreciate all your insight. And I think we're probably just going to wrap it here for today. Sound good?
I think so too, Alec. Nice job.
Thanks,
Luke,
man.
great to have you back, my friend. Wolf Dog. Dang.
All right, guys. Well, hey, if you like the episode, please remember to like, subscribe, and rate us on everywhere that you can find podcasts. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. The list goes on. And then our YouTube channel. Remember, that is YouTube, and that is, I believe we are Madlab Performance is the page. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Mike. And so that as well. Subscribe, please. View our stuff, obviously. But turn on those notifications so every time we post a new video, you can get that immediate little ding and hey, we got a new video up, and you can love more Madlab stuff. Thank you again, guys.
But thank you guys again for another episode of The Lab.